because that's what it feels like.
Sure.
So I guess what I want to say is that our perceptions, those of us with trauma history, that especially if it's unaddressed, our perceptions are not always accurate.
Yeah.
We frequently have a disproportional picture of what is true in the world, and what it is that we react to. Yeah. So I want to say about that ACEs study one more time. If you're interested, find it. ACES, Adverse Childhood Experiences
Well, I'm
Study.
going to put
It's fascinating.
When the show is over, usually over the weekend, what I do is I do a promo. A post-production promo where I have the video and I put that, and I also put links and information in there. So at some point, if you would remind me, because my brain doesn't work the way it should anymore. Yeah, the name of that book, right? Yeah. And whatever information that you think that the listeners should know, and I will definitely include that. And you know what I do a lot when I have extremely interesting guests on? Is I use my family as, I bounce ideas off of. Hey, I learned this because I'm learning stuff. I've learned so much in the last 2 years from people in this community.
For sure.
My daughter is in her 3rd year of her doctoral program for being a chiropractor. She's also a licensed yoga instructor and a life coach. So my next phone call with her is going to be very, very interesting.
Did you know?
I'm sure she does. I'm sure she already knew this,
but you're going to be going, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and she's, I need to know this person. So
I would love to meet her. That would be great.
She's our little ninja warrior princess. That's what we call her. Yeah, so. But it's interesting that all this is connected. You wouldn't think that, obviously, going through through trauma and through things in your life that are they adversely affect your physical body, that those 2 things or 3 things or 4 things, even from what you said, are it's so interconnected.
Totally interconnected. Totally interconnected.
The ACE, is it ACE?
ACES.
ACE.
ACEs. It's the ACE study. Adverse Childhood Experiences Study.
Now, how does this tie? And I'm just off the top of my head. You earlier the rat story.
Yeah.
Right. So is it possible that some of the physical ailments and diseases and whatnot that you have, that a person has, can be a result of that generational trauma?
It can be a direct result. Yes. A direct result. And right, that heart disease and cancer and diabetes, they consider that there is a genetic link.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I do know that. I'm diabetic, and they have told me, you didn't give yourself diabetes, which I had a hard time dealing with, because if you saw the way I used to eat. But yeah, they told me that is definitely a matter of genetics.
Yes, and so obviously is trauma.
Yeah.
So is there a connection?
Obviously, I don't know.
So according to ACEs, there's a connection.
But people who and this puts me in a position, because people who have been listening to the show for years know I have Parkinson's, I have diabetes, I have cancer, I have neuropathy. And 3 of those things are hereditary.
Okay.
And as we talked earlier, I have no recollection of any trauma. I had a charmed childhood growing up. Everything was just puppies and kittens that I could remember. Right. But maybe there's something I don't remember, which would translate to a lot of people who may be feeling the same thing. Well, I've got all these physical ailments. I don't remember having, anything in my life that was traumatic. Now you brought this whole other dimension into this.
I opened the can of worms. I did, yes. So I want to say about that, if you don't remember periods of your childhood, and I know people they say, well, I don't remember until I was 7. I don't remember any of my childhood until I was 7.
I go back to 3. I remember my 3rd birthday.
Okay, I remember back to being an infant being carried by my father.
Oh, wow.
But that being the case, my father was also an unrecovered alcoholic.
Yeah.
Who committed suicide when I was 10.
Yeah.
So what
There's
I'll say
trauma.
is, does it always correlate that, you don't remember? No, that's not true. But sometimes people block that stuff off so that they don't remember it anymore because it's too painful to remember.
So that's a defense mechanism.
It's a defense mechanism. So you may or may not know. And I guess the question is if you have great big blank spaces in your remembrance of your childhood, That could be an indication. That's a possibility.
That's very interesting.
You know, the other thing that I wanted to say about, so why yoga as a method for working with trauma, as I said, physically, because we lose our ability to be present in our bodies,
Sure.
and that's important. Breath is huge. Meditation is a part of that as well, because it helps us to focus, and people who are anxious typically don't focus well.
Right.
The other thing is science has found some interesting things. So there's something called the vagus nerve that lives in our body. It is the longest nerve in the human body. It runs from our gut to our brain. And I say it that way rather than our brain to our gut, because for a long time scientists believed that the impulses started in the brain and moved down to the belly. The truth is, the impulses start in your belly and move up to your brain. So the feelings that you get here are from the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, which I know I mentioned a little bit ago.
Yes, you did.
Okay, so the sympathetic nervous system is responsible in trauma for fight or flight. This parasympathetic is the relax. So that's also free. It's the combination of the two. It's a freeze response. It's like, I can't move, but I'm scared to death, right? So it's like that. But it's not relaxed. Relaxed is parasympathetic. If you want to go to sleep, you want your parasympathetic online. You cannot have your parasympathetic online if your brain is racing with thoughts of, oh my God, what's going to happen now? And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I may lose my job today. And da-da-da-da-da. You know, when our brain is running,
wow.
right? Or what's he going to do? And is he going to come home drunk? And what's going to happen to the kids?
Yeah.
You
Just
can't go to sleep like that.
a constant state of angst.
It is. Yeah. You can't go to sleep like that. So the relationship between insomnia and trauma are very close. All of that, how does that relate to yoga? This is all stuff that I learned how to deal with and overcome with yoga. This was my own journey. When I read that, I mean, I was a yoga teacher. When I read that book, I was not yet a yoga therapist, but that was soon to come. That's another 1,500 hours of coursework. But when I read that book and I recognized, and he also talks about, Dr. van der Kolk talks about yoga as a way in. And I thought, well, it's been my way in.
Yeah.
I get that.
Sure.
What I didn't understand was, okay, so how do I work with these 4 to 7 out of 10 people in my class that have trauma history? And there is training for that. It's trauma-aware yoga. You know, there are several iterations of that, different people that teach it. I teach it too, and I teach teachers how to work with that as well. One of the things, so this is an interest, that teacher that I was telling you about was way back in history before before all these studies came out. Walking behind people. You don't do that.
Yeah.
You don't do that in a class where you know you've got people that have trauma history, because that's scary to know that there could be somebody coming up behind you at any moment. Yeah. There are certain poses you don't do with trauma survivors. Downward dog would be one of those for kind of obvious reasons.
Yeah.
You know, cat-cow would be one of those for kind of obvious reasons. There are a few others, but the point is, as a teacher, and many teachers don't have this awareness, we are so capable of triggering our students without even realizing it, just like my teacher did to me.
Yeah.
Completely unintentionally.
Yeah.
I don't adjust people. I don't touch them. I definitely don't touch them without permission. And the only time I will touch at all is if they're doing something that I am concerned will actually hurt them. Yeah. And I've tried already to tell them, to demonstrate first what it is that I want them to do instead, to explain it to them. And if that doesn't work, then can I touch you to show you what I mean?
But sometimes, you know, if someone's falling over, I got punched in the face a long time ago by someone who had too much to drink, and they had tripped and were heading into, if they had hit what they were unintentionally aiming for, they would have been hurt bad. So really my reaction, I reached out and I grabbed her in an inappropriate spot unintentionally, and the elbow came back and gave me a black eye, and I was like, well, sorry, but you would have punctured your face on a spiked fence,
Right.
But no, I understand that, and I know what some of those poses are. I've attempted yoga. I wasn't very successful at it, just mainly because my body doesn't have stamina, or I was doing it wrong. More than likely, I was just doing it wrong.
Maybe you were holding your breath.
But probably. But yeah, no, I understand now, by what you just said about you have to get permission to put your hands on somebody.
Yes, you do.
And thankfully people are becoming more and more aware of that in many situations. But I can understand how if someone has CPTSD or even just anxiety, how that would be an unnerving experience. Just all of a sudden, this arm comes out of nowhere and you're being manipulated.
Yeah, especially if you're like touching their hips to move their hips in a direction.
Yeah.
Right. Or it can be really.
Yeah. Well, no, there's a lot of people that they were sexually molested.
Yes.
When they were very young, and that doesn't go away.
Nope.
That sticks
That's
with
trauma.
you. I want to ask you real quick.
Yeah.
You said that vagus nerve.
Yes.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's he's a counselor here in town, and he had told me when he works with people, he says, okay, your inner critic, right? When you ask your inner critic, I'm really mangling this, so bear with me. Where do you feel the physical? And most people feel it in their gut. In their gut. And I was like, well, that's fascinating. I thought, like many other people, everything comes from here and emanates throughout the body, especially emotional things. But no, he said, if you address that inner critic and you ask where you feel it, most people will feel it here, which tells me that's where it starts. And then it comes up. And I never really put that together until you mentioned about how that works. That's fascinating.